Look up, right now. You probably don't see anything, just the sky, maybe clouds, maybe stars if it's night. It feels empty, quiet, still, like nothing is happening. But that's not reality, because above your head, right now, there are thousands of objects moving across the sky at unimaginable speeds. You just can't see them. And that's what makes this so strange. Because if your eyes could suddenly detect everything orbiting Earth, the sky would stop feeling peaceful. It would feel crowded, almost overwhelming. We've been trained to think of space as empty, as something far away, disconnected from everyday life. But in reality, the space just above Earth is one of the most active environments humans have ever created. A region filled with machines, signals, movement, constant activity. And it never stops. Right now, there are thousands of satellites orbiting Earth. Not floating, not drifting, orbiting, which means they are moving so fast sideways that they continuously miss the ground as they fall toward it. That's what orbit really is. A controlled fall, at extreme speed. Most satellites in low Earth orbit travel at around 28,000 kilometers per hour. That's over 7 kilometers per second. Faster than a bullet. Faster than anything you've ever experienced. And yet, from the ground, you feel nothing. No vibration. No sound. No indication that this entire layer of motion exists above you. If you could zoom out from Earth right now, you wouldn't see a clean, empty halo around the planet. You'd see a dense network. Thousands of objects circling in different directions, at different altitudes, crossing paths constantly. Some are close to Earth, a few hundred kilometers above the surface. Others are much farther out, tens of thousands of kilometers away. Each one placed there for a specific purpose, each one doing something. And together, they form something most people never think about. A global system, an invisible infrastructure. Most people assume satellites do simple things. GPS, weather, TV signals. That's what we're told. And it's true, but it's also incomplete. Because satellites are not just passive tools. They are active systems, constantly collecting, sending, and processing information. Every second. Some satellites are dedicated to navigation. They send timing signals so precise that your phone can calculate your exact position anywhere on Earth. Not approximately, exactly. Others monitor weather systems, tracking cloud movement, storm formation, temperature shifts. They don't just observe, they predict. And those predictions shape decisions made across entire countries. Then there are communication satellites, relaying signals across continents, allowing data to move instantly from one side of the planet to the other. And then there are observation satellites. And this is where things get more interesting. Observation satellites are designed to look at Earth, but not in a casual way. In a precise, structured, data-driven way. They don't just take pictures. They measure change. Over time. They track how cities grow, how forests shrink, how ice melts, how oceans shift. They monitor movement patterns, energy use, agricultural activity, not to watch individuals, but to understand systems. Because when you zoom out far enough, human activity becomes data, patterns, flows, and patterns reveal things that individual moments cannot. For example, a satellite can detect changes in nighttime light patterns, which can indicate economic activity, or population movement, or infrastructure changes. It can track heat signatures across regions, revealing industrial zones, or environmental stress. It can monitor crop health from space, predicting shortages before they happen. And all of this happens continuously, without interruption. Here's where things start to feel different. Because once you understand what satellites are capable of, you start to realize something. The sky above you is not just a place. It's a system of awareness. Not awareness in a human sense, but awareness in a structural sense. A system that observes, records, updates, constantly. And you don't interact with it directly. You don't control it. You don't even notice it. But it's there, running in the background of your life, quietly shaping the systems you depend on. Most people think modern life depends on visible things: roads, electricity, buildings. But a huge part of modern civilization depends on something else entirely, something invisible: data moving through space, signals traveling between Earth and orbit, constant synchronization between ground systems and satellites. When you use GPS, you're not connecting to the internet, you're connecting to space. When planes navigate across oceans, they rely on satellite positioning. When weather forecasts predict storms, they depend on satellite data. When global communication systems function smoothly, satellites are part of that process. Not always directly, but deeply embedded. And because it's invisible, most people never question it. Now here's the part that becomes difficult to ignore. The number of satellites is increasing rapidly. Every year, more are launched. More systems are added. More coverage is created. Private companies, governments, and organizations are all contributing to this expansion. Companies like SpaceX have launched large constellations designed to provide global internet coverage. Organizations like NASA and European Space Agency continue to expand observation and research capabilities. And as this network grows, so does its complexity. More objects, more interactions, more potential for things to go wrong. Because space, unlike Earth, doesn't have natural cleanup systems. Nothing decays quickly. Nothing slows down easily. Everything stays in motion. Every satellite launched into orbit eventually reaches the end of its life. Some are brought down intentionally, burned up in the atmosphere, but many are not. They remain in orbit, inactive, drifting, becoming debris. Fragments from past collisions add to this problem. Pieces of metal, panels, bolts, even tiny shards. And here's the critical part. At orbital speeds, even the smallest object becomes extremely dangerous. A tiny fragment moving at 28,000 kilometers per hour carries enormous kinetic energy, enough to destroy a satellite completely. And when that happens, it creates more debris, which increases the chance of more collisions. There is a concept known as the Kessler syndrome. It describes a scenario where the density of objects in orbit becomes so high that collisions start triggering more collisions, a chain reaction, self-sustaining. Each impact creates debris. That debris causes more impacts, which creates even more debris. Over time, entire regions of orbit could become too dangerous to use. Not destroyed, not exploded, just unusable. And that changes everything. Because once access to orbit becomes limited, the systems that depend on it begin to weaken. Now imagine something different. Not a dramatic explosion, not a sudden collapse, just failure. Gradual, silent. Satellites begin to malfunction. Some stop transmitting, others lose stability. Signals become inconsistent. At first, the effects are small, barely noticeable. GPS accuracy drops slightly. Weather predictions become less precise. Communication delays increase. Nothing alarming. But then it builds. Air travel becomes less efficient. Shipping routes become harder to optimize. Emergency systems lose precision. And over time, the accumulation of small failures creates larger problems. Not because any one system collapses completely, but because everything becomes less reliable. It's hard to imagine modern life without satellites, because they are integrated into systems so deeply that removing them doesn't create a single obvious failure. It creates many small ones, layered, compounding. For example, navigation becomes less precise, which affects transportation efficiency, which affects supply chains, which affects availability of goods. Weather forecasting weakens, which affects agriculture, which affects food production. Communication systems degrade, which affects coordination across regions. Each individual change seems manageable, but together, they reshape how civilization functions. The sky above you is not empty. It never has been. But now, more than ever, it is active, engineered, structured. A layer of human-created systems orbiting the planet, operating continuously, without pause, without recognition. And most of the time, without thought, because you don't need to think about it. It just works, until it doesn't. Right now, above your head, thousands of objects are moving faster than anything on Earth, tracking, measuring, communicating, supporting systems you rely on every day. You don't see them, you don't hear them, you don't feel them, but they are there. And they are part of your life, whether you realize it or not. Because space is no longer something distant. It is not something separate from Earth. It is part of the system we've built. An invisible layer above the world, holding everything together, quietly, constantly. And the only reason it feels empty is because you can't see what's really there.